This is an Epoch Fights of the Titan electronic game, a rare 1980s tabletop that I imported from Japan. I bought it spares or repair, but it's got a lovely bright vacuum fluorescent display, and I've repaired many similar VFD games on the channel before, so I was hoping that it was going to be an easy fix. That, however, was not the case, so let's dig into it right now and find out just what is the problem with this game. And initial impressions are pretty good. As we say, it has a nice bright display, the sound also works, there's a little bit of cosmetic wear and damage which is to be expected, so it's clearly being played, but the problem is that I can't play it, because no matter how hard I try, I can't get the player character to move. It's encouraging though that the anti-tamper sticker is still intact, and it really doesn't look like anyone's been tampering in here before. It is, however, missing the battery door, and I only have a very small 3D printer at home. In fact, here it is, next to the Fights of the Titan. And the battery door is just a little bit bigger than I can print on this little 3D printer. So we better get one ordered up from the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. It's an easy task for me to upload the 3D print file to PCBWay's website, and I get a high quality part in my hands within a few days. Of course, PCBWay offers many more services than just 3D printing. They have injection molding, CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, and of course their excellent printed circuit boards. What happens though if you have a circuit design and you need a printed circuit board, but like me, you don't have the skills to lay it out? Or perhaps you need a full electronics design service for your business? Well, PCBWay has you covered there too. Their expert PCB layout services offer rapid turnaround for your electronics designs, and their professional electronic design services can take care of your end-to-end development from concept to production. So no matter what your retro repair needs or your full electronic design requirements, PCBWay have you covered. There's a link in the video description, and we're very grateful for them for sponsoring the video today. And before we get back into the electronics repair, it's worth noting that I ordered my battery door in the wrong colour. That's easily remedied with a little bit of paint in my somewhat untidy garage. Looking inside the game then, and it has this kind of scenery around the VFD display that I'm going to remove. Just 3 screws hold this plastic controller assembly in place above a printed circuit board, and I suspect that either this assembly or the printed circuit board beneath it are the cause of our problem. A quick visual inspection doesn't show anything immediately wrong with the PCB, but these controllers work by shorting out tracks on that printed circuit board using the carbon pills on the back of the plastic assembly, so let's take a look at those. And they look good too, with no signs of wear or damage. Next steps then are to look at that PCB under a microscope. And there are some signs of corrosion which I'm going to try and clean off with some IPA on a cotton bud. Now I've used this technique many times before, but under the microscope you can see that there is still some corrosion remaining. So I cleaned off the pads again with a fiberglass pencil, and although there's some scratching, you can now see that the pads are clean by comparison to those which were cleaned with IPA alone. Now that our printed circuit board is clean, let's clean off the carbon pills on the back of the controller using another cotton bud and a little more IPA. And then we'll put everything back together and see if it now works. But it doesn't. The next stage then is to take a look at connectivity and the electronics themselves, and in order to do that, I'm going to separate the plastics from the electronics assembly. It's probably not necessary to do this, but it's the way I prefer to work, and all I need to do is separate the battery contacts and undo a couple of screws to release the printed circuit boards and the piezo sounder. And now with everything separated, we can take a look at what we've got. And what we've got really isn't very much at all. We've got 3 transistors, 1 transformer, 1 crystal, and a microprocessor, together with a handful of passive components and a few diodes. So there really isn't a lot to go wrong here. The ribbon cable that connects the controller board to the printed circuit assembly isn't particularly durable, and I've seen these fail before, so I decided to check the continuity on those, both to the point where it's soldered onto the board and also to further along on the chip. And there's no problem with any of those connections. So I then decide to connect up some power and to simulate key presses by shorting each of the connections on the printed circuit board together close to the pads. There's no meter on the ends of the probes here, I've just got the two ends connected together in order to provide a circuit. To rule out the possibility of an open circuit on the controller board as the source of the problem, I test not just the pad, but also at the connections of the ribbon cable to the main PCB. And while the start button works and I can start the game, I unfortunately still cannot move the play character. So a couple of days have passed. In the meantime, I have recapped our printed circuit assembly here, replaced each of these electrolytic capacitors with the same value, just a new cap. Probably didn't need to do that. I just thought I'm going to keep this game a while, so for longevity, it's probably worth doing. But I don't think it's got anything to do with the problems that we're experiencing. Those problems, I think, are because the gameplay is waiting for us to hit a key and it's not registering the key that we need to hit. So I've been probing around with my meter here on continuity test, and I found something which I don't think is the very best of news, but I'll take you through what I've been doing. So first of all, I'm just checking continuity from here, each of the pads to our ribbon cable here, and everything seems good. I think this side is good, so the problem lies on this board over here. Presuming, of course, that we're making the jump over here. So now I'm going to check from here to the pins on this resistor array. Let me take a look now. I think one of these is skipped because I think this is maybe an 8-way and there's 7 connections or something like that, but we'll double check. So that's good. All right, yes. So each of the controller pads are making their way to this resistor array. So then we'll check from the resistor array to the chip. This is just a pull-up, I think, for each of the inputs here, so we'll check those. So they are all good too. Now my meter's just about to turn off, so we'll let it do that a minute. So a resistor array like this, I think it's just 8 resistors kind of common together. And in fact, on this other VFD game board I have here, you can see kind of examples of a similar construct of resistor array. At least you can if my camera will focus on it. So we can get it to do that. There we are. And you can see in this one, it's just actually got the actual resistors kind of common together. That is something like that arrangement only in this package here. So essentially this is, I think, 8 10K resistors with one kind of common, which is the end pin here. And what that's doing is just serving as a pull-up on the pins to the input of our microprocessor. And you can see here on the back that the connection is just straight from here to here to here and then onto the microprocessor. So connectivity to the microprocessor or microcontroller, as it probably is good. Next then, I'm going to measure resistance across each of these pull-ups, just in case something is floating and it's not being pulled up in the way that it should. Since we've already proven connectivity though, I'm just going to measure that resistance directly on the pads. That way, if there's a rogue resistance anywhere in the circuit, we're going to see it. And we'll start with a pad that we know does work, which is either start or select, I forget which it is. And we can see we've got pretty much 100K, which I think is what the pull-up here would be. We'll try that on each of the others. 100K, 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 100K. Try that again. 20K. So that has a different value to each of the others. And in fact, we see this also at this resistor array. So if I go through the common here, we can see that that one is 20, but each of the others is 100 all the way along to the end. So I think one of two things is the problem here. Either this resistor array is defective, which seems unlikely, but it's possible that it's defective and it's got 20K or something and it's not acting effectively as a pull-up, or perhaps more likely our IC is defective. So we better find out which of those two it is, and I'm going to start by removing the resistor array. and then I remove the ribbon cable to the keypad assembly so that we can be absolutely sure that there's nothing connected to the input pins of the microcontroller. All that remains now then is to measure the resistance between the main power line to the chip, which is where the pull-up would ordinarily connect, and each of the input pins that are used for the keypad input. And we have open circuit, 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 and then 25 ohms. So this pin is clearly internally shorted or internally connected in some way that it should not be. And if we pause the video here and zoom in, we can see that there are no other connections to these pins, so we can absolutely confirm that the problem is internal to the chip. That chip is a D553C, a 4-bit single-chip microcomputer, and according to the datasheet, there's nothing special about our suspect pin. It's just a normal input pin on what is labelled port A, so there's no reason it should be different to any other input pin. The worst news is that the D553C is a mask-programmed microcomputer. That is to say, it's programmed at the factory during the manufacturing process, and there's no sensible way for me to get a replacement or to get a blank chip and reprogram it. So where then does that leave our hurriedly reassembled Fights of the Titan? And the simple answer is not in a very good place. Although I suspect strongly I know what's wrong with it, I have no way of repairing that fault, so it looks destined just to be a shelf ornament, perhaps one day recipient of a replacement microcontroller from a donor game, or if I'm feeling particularly adventurous, some kind of Pico-based replacement for its ailing CPU. So unfortunately that does just about wrap it up for our Epoch Fights of the Titan for today. I hope that you've enjoyed the video and that if you have, you'll consider hype, like or subscribe. But until next time, I'd just like to thank you so much for watching Retro Tech Repair.